Okay. All right. Welcome to the top of the hour, everyone. This is your last session of the day. Thank you for joining us for Rethinking the Demo, delivering product experiences that modern buying groups crave with Garen Hess. My name is Garrett Erickson. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at Consensus. I'll be your moderator for today's sessions. DEMOFEST is presented by Consensus. Transform how you sell with Consensus, the full funnel product experience platform. High performing revenue teams automate demos, drive faster decisions, and accelerate growth. You can visit goconsensus.com to learn more, or click watch a demo at the top of your screen and experience our platform for yourself. We really want you to engage in today's session. We know it's late, it's the end of the day, but we want you to bring that energy here and keep up with us. There are a few different ways to do that on the right side of your console. Whether this is your first or last session of the day, the chat function has been really key to having people express their thoughts, get to know each other, and connect with us as well as other attendees. There is going to be a poll in today's session, so you'll see that on the right side of your console. So when that launches, we'll be able to take that poll. And then lastly, there's the Documents tab where you can have helpful things there and other resources. And then the Q&A. Garen does want to take some Q&A with you all. And so put that on the far right side in the Q&A box so we can handle those and see them a little more clearly. If at any time you have a technical problem or any difficulties, go ahead and head down to the bottom of your screen where you've got the gear and you can troubleshoot from there. And we've also got in that section a helpful doc where you can see and troubleshoot some of the common issues that people experience. Now it's my privilege to introduce our speaker, Garen Hess. Garen is a serial entrepreneur with 2 decades of hands-on in the trenches experience. Garen has founded 2 software companies, 2 industry conferences, and a nonprofit organization. He's also the co-founder of Consensus, the author of the book Selling is Hard, Buying is Harder, all about buyer enablement, and is a great pilot and now spends his time chasing grandkids. So with that, Garen, we welcome you to the stage, and I will stop my share.
Great. Thanks, Garrett. It's so great to be at DEMOFEST again. It's so wonderful. Just want to welcome everybody to, I think this is our 6th annual DEMOFEST, and I can't help but think back on when we started it in 2020, right after the pandemic got going. And it's just become an incredible global event, bringing so many wonderful people together. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll just make sure this is working good. So let me know if you have any issues there, Garrett. But yeah, so thank you for joining in this session. I am excited to share this topic with you. And I really hope that this is a meaty topic that will help you take away some really important points in terms of how to address the massive changes that have happened with the buying group and the way buyers have changed. So I want to start by just setting the stage that my focus when we founded Consensus and as we've tried to build Consensus over the years has always been to try to make B2B buying easier. So the focus has been on buyer enablement. That's what this book, Selling is Hard, Buying is Harder is really how do you sell through your champion and help them make the whole process easier for them and for the whole buying group. In 2021, I delivered a presentation at DEMOFEST called the 6 Demo Types, and I decided to use the retro slides, just one of the slides from that, to level set, because this is really, in a sense, an expansion on that initial content of the 6 demo types. And what the 6 demo types was about was really to just create a baseline for everybody, was really about how often in solution consulting we think of the demo, or we used to think of the demo as just one type of demo, or we just say the demo, and yet there were so many different types of demos that sales engineers were giving, and even salespeople would sometimes get involved in demoing, and and there wasn't really a way to break down and think about the ways that demos were being delivered at different stages of the buying group, and really what the buyer needed and needs at the different stages of the buying group. So I want to review this briefly. I did give a whole hour presentation on it, so there's a lot more content. You can go find that content at goconsensus.com. If you just go search out there for the 6 demo types, you can find a bunch of material on this topic. But I want to just level set this so we can dive into what are all of the product experiences that the buying group really needs and craves right now to have a successful buying experience. So if we think about the 6 demo types, I would argue that these 6 demo types have been being delivered to buyers throughout the last couple of decades. We just don't really realize that that is what has been happening. And what I'm going to focus on is really what the need is of the buyer and how a certain type of demo can be used to meet the needs of that buyer at that stage. Because as in solution consulting, we often make the error of just dumping too much on the buyer at too early. And really, this is one of the key aspects or elements of being effective at demoing, is making sure you give the right amount of what I call content density to the buyer at the right stage. So just briefly, the 6 demo types, the first one was the vision demo. And the question is, what does the buyer need at this stage of change and discontent? What they're really looking for is just to catch a vision. And the focus here is the problem, solution, and benefit, as you can see on the slide here. And it can be quite short. And quite often, this should be an automated demo in some way. And really, you're not diving into the product very much. If you do dive into the product, you're just showing a sneak peek of maybe a key screen here, a key screen there, to help them catch the vision. You're not really trying to help them understand how you deliver on the vision. It's just how the vision might solve their problem. So at the next stage is the micro demo, which is really when the buyer is trying to make a short list of solution vendors that could deliver a solution that might achieve the vision that they're hoping for. So in the micro demo, it's a little bit longer demo. It can be. I think our current recommendation is it might be 10 or 20 minutes. I think this old slide says 5 to 7 minutes. But what you're doing here is it's still a generic demo. It's not tailored to the customer in terms of data being inserted into the software database or anything like that. But it is designed to still focus on the problem, solution, benefit, but dive deeper into how you deliver on the vision. So it helps the buyer select you or your solution as part of the short list. So that's where the micro demo is. And a lot of times people get, when we think of it from a solution consulting standpoint, it is we think of this as the standard, the dreaded standard demo. Can you just hop on a call and do a 20-minute demo? It's the thing that SEs really dislike. It's repetitive. It's not consultative. And again, this really should be automated in some way. And thankfully, platforms like Consensus can personalize the experience, even at this level, to each individual buyer that engages with that. So the goal here is to help them put you on the short list, and you're part of the research. The buyer is trying to find vendors that can help them reach that vision. The next type of demo is the qualifying demo, and I sometimes call this the disqualifying demo, because right here at this stage in the learning stage, the buyer is trying to compare how you deliver a solution compared to others. And they're trying to whittle that short list down to an even smaller short list, the finalists, ultimately. This is a demo that should also be automated. And when I'm talking about automated demos, and we're going to dive into other types of product experiences in a minute, but when I generally talk about automating a demo, I'm talking about video-based demos where you can actually demonstrate. You are showing them how it works. So again, the goal here is to be on their extra short list as they compare your solution with some of the others, and you're trying to qualify them and they're trying to qualify you. And in short, what I would recommend is that when you send them this automated demo, if they will not engage with the automated demo that is relatively short, then you probably should not engage them with solution consulting resources. So this is a sort of a qualifying gate. So each side is qualifying the other, buyer and seller, is like I like to say the buying coaches. So that's a qualifying demo. And then of course we have the technical demo, which is what we as an industry have often called the solution consulting industry. Technical selling industry has often called just the demo. And this is the deep dive demo. Could be 30 to 60 minutes, could be several hours. Super complex solutions might even take multiple days. This one you're not going to automate. This is the demo that needs to be delivered by the solution consultants. And this is where they shine. This is the stage, by the way, of the fear stage, where the buyer has selected you, or they might have narrowed it down to maybe 2 finalists, and they are worried that they're going to make a mistake. They believe in you, they believe in your solution, but they're worried that they're going to make a big mistake. And so the technical demo helps them grow in confidence. And there are lots of things you can do to help buyers move past this fear stage, like implementation guides and FAQ demos that might help them get through questions about integrations and things like that. So the 5th demo is what we call closing and FAQ demos. The 5th and 6th demos. The closing demo, or these are, and FAQ demos are short demos that are about a specific topic. Could be about GDPR and data compliance, data privacy compliance, or could be about integrating with a key CRM, or anything that they have questions about as they're trying to make the final close and make that commitment. It also helps them overcome that fear, but it's more about just verifying that, yeah, we're ready to commit and we just got to check off the boxes. So it could be a number of different things depending on what your solution, what the product line or market segment is that they're going to want as these short, very focused demos about a specific topic. So these are the 6 demo types that we were discussing in 2021. Well, now it's 2025. So what has changed since then, and what does the buying group need at this point? So first of all, and this is just a little animation that shows the FAQ demos can really be used throughout, because different stakeholders that they engage might have questions, and you can send them those automated demos throughout. So one question I want you to ponder as we talk about how buyers have changed is, have you changed? Have your technical sellers, solution consultants, even counterparts in marketing and client success, have they changed? And if not, I would encourage you to consider being the change agent in your organization. Even if you're a frontline person, you can have a tremendous impact. And we've seen many consensus customers through the years that were frontline sales engineers, or even B2B sales reps that just realize what the buyer's needs, that the buyer's needs have changed, and their organization needs to get with the program, get with the modern way the modern buyers behave, and how their expectations have changed. So I just encourage you to be that change agent, but just ask yourself this question: have I changed? Has my team changed? If you're a sales leader, solution consulting leader, or even a marketing leader, how's your organization changed intentionally to meet the needs of the buyer? So let's talk about what the modern B2B buyers expect. They expect everything to be easy and simple. Is B2B buying easy and simple? I would say definitely not. So they want it to be even enjoyable and fast, self-directed, digital first, anytime, anywhere, and then of course, personalized to their industry, to their company, their market segment, and even personalized to them individually, which is quite the tall order. But thankfully, through buyer enablement methodologies and principles and technologies, we can deliver on what the modern buyers are expecting. So one example is buyers today don't want to be held hostage to your calendar, and they don't want to be reliant on your individual schedule. So why are we trying to keep buyers in our sales process when really we should be adapting their buying process? And I think there's nothing more annoying than wanting a demo or wanting the next move to the next step and feeling as a buyer that I've got to wait for the calendar to open before I can make progress. Modern buyers not only want to move faster, and they want to have everything digital first, so you're not reliant on calendar-based meetings, but they expect it. They're not going to tolerate vendors that don't meet their modern needs and expectations. So I would just ask you to consider this question: is buying from your organization easy and simple? Is it enjoyable? Is it fast? Is it self-directed? Is it digital first? Anytime, anywhere? Is it personalized? And I'd really like to have you think about how you might address even one of these things, and take that away and take away some actionable items that you can work on. But really, the buyer of today is not going to buy from organizations that don't meet these requirements. These are no longer nice to haves, they are requirements. And if you think about what the modern buyer is experiencing on the retail side, we are all of us are modern buyers on the retail side. We can purchase from Amazon faster than we can put it on our to-do list. And Amazon, for example, has made it so easy to buy that's one of the reasons they become, I would argue, the main reason they become as ubiquitous and the market leader that they are. And you think about Apple or Tesla or many other organizations that are now really trying hard to focus on making retail buying easy. Well, as retail buyers, we that work in B2B organizations, well, we just start to expect or be highly annoyed or frustrated, are the kind simple words to say about how we feel when we go through the complex, difficult, painful, long B2B buying process that exists in so many organizations today. So if you want to be that change agent in your organization, I would suggest that you take this list to your leadership and say, is it easy and simple to buy from us? Is it enjoyable, fast, self-directed, digital first, anytime, anywhere, personalized? If not, change needs to happen. The buyers are going to run for the hills unless we deliver on this. So the answer is, in general, no. So otherwise I wouldn't be giving this presentation. If all of you or all of our organizations were doing this, we wouldn't need to be talking about it. But the answer across the industry is no, in a big way. Our organizations generally are not, enterprise software organizations are not easy to buy from. So what do we do about that? We've got to address the buyers the way they want to be addressed. Now, we talked about how the buyers have changed. Well, how have the buying groups changed? This is where the majority of my presentation is going to focus, is how we address the changes in the buying groups. And you're going to hear a lot at DEMOFEST, and you probably have heard already about the way buying has changed and how we need to meet the needs of the buyers. And that's one of the reasons I want to focus on the buying group. Sometimes we think of the buyer as just the prospect or champion, that is going through the process and what their expectations are. But really, the buyer, if we just say the buyer, it is really a group of people. Well, how has it changed? Back in the day, and this is an old retro slide I used for my presentation in 2021. You know, that champion, behind the champion, there might have been 3, 5, 6 people, you know, that were working with the champion. And that buying group of yesteryear was already pretty difficult to work with. But let's look at what has changed in the buying group. The buying groups have more than doubled in size. So back in 2015, CEB published a Harvard Business Review article that was pretty fascinating called Making the Consensus Sale. I have to say I like that title, The Consensus Sale. And they said the average B2B buying group was 5.4. And then they went on to say, well, what's the impact of having so many people in the buying group? And we'll come back to that. But look at how the buying group has grown over the years. So that in 2025, they're 11 to 14. And there are 3 different data points that say that this buying group, the buying groups are this big. And so, so this is a massive change. And there are a lot of reasons that buying groups have grown so significantly. But we're not going to delve into all of that. But needless to say, the buying group and the stakeholders doubling in size does not make our job any easier as technical selling organizations or as buying coaches. So if you know me and if you've read my book, you know I really encourage us to stop thinking of ourselves as salespeople and more as coaches of the buyer. You think about a coach on a basketball, you know, the NBA tournament starting. You think of a coach on a basketball team that can't make the points. They can only coach the point guard and the team to get out there and make the points. And that's kind of how we are with buying groups. We cannot go out and sign that deal. We can only coach the champion to go help sell inside that organization. So what do we do about this big buying group? Well, let's talk more about it. So how has your sales team changed to adapt to that modern buying group? Not only to the modern buying expectations, but the size of this group. I want to pop up a poll question here. So Garrett, I think, is going to pop that up for us. If you wouldn't mind putting that up. What percentage of your sales reps know how to personalize the value message to each stakeholder? So you think about, you have all of these stakeholders, 11 different stakeholders. And by the way, that's the number of roles that quite often gets involved, not just the number of people. So what is the number of, or the percentage of sales reps that in your organization that you think know how to personalize the value message to each stakeholder in the buying group? So if you think the modern buyer, let's see, Garrett, are we getting that poll question up here?
Yes, sorry, looking for it.
Working on it, okay. Go to the
Okay,
polls
looks
tab.
like it's up.
Okay, great. Can everybody see that? Just maybe put thumbs up or something in the chat. So,
all right, it just came through the chat, but with if you answered in the chat, put them in the poll.
In the poll itself, yeah, it's there in the poll. You got to go to the poll, little poll section up near the chat messages to answer there. So if you think about, you have all these stakeholders in the buying group. What do the buyers want? They want a personalized experience. Well, with 5.4 people, that was already hard enough. Now that it's 11 to 14, and I've talked to people that sell into higher education, and they say their buying groups are 40 plus people, which is just absolutely insane. How do you get them to have a personalized experience? Well, first of all, you got to think, how many do my sales reps even know how to deliver a personalized value message to each stakeholder who has a different perspective? Each stakeholder's got these different needs. So let's go ahead and show the poll results there, Garrett. Can we see those poll results? Garrett, you with me?
Yeah, I'm
Making
with you.
sure.
Yep, I
Okay.
haven't been able to see the full results yet.
Okay. Okay. Well, when those come up, we'll take a look at them. I ask this question whenever I'm talking about buyer enablement with sales teams, sales leaders in particular. I ask them this question, and once we get to see the poll results, if we do get to see them, and I might just continue on here because the most important thing is kind of what's the answer to this, because there is a research-based answer to this question. But I often get the response when I ask a sales leader, hey, what percentage of your sales reps know how to personalize the value message to each stakeholder in the buying group? And they all sort of shuffle and look around like, that's not going to be very high. And it's usually a lot of times people say 1 in 10. And I
All
think,
right,
wow,
Darren, those
yeah.
full results are in. So we had for A, we had 0 votes. For B, 5, C, 22,
Okay.
and D, 6.
Okay. So you got a group, a well-spread group here, but none of you are saying the 75 to 100% of you've got it down. Well, let's just look at the research. The research says that 7.7% of sales teams know how to personalize the value message. And that's less than 1 in 10. That means 9 out of 10 of your reps, I would say most reps, you'll know better in your own organization, but know how to do this. And it's surprising to me that this number is so low. On the other hand, if you think about how your sales reps present the value proposition, that's usually a bit on just autopilot and a lot of times. And they're not necessarily thinking about how does this new stakeholder get involved and what is their perspective about the deal and how does it differ from the champion's perspective and what do they need that is different. The other challenge, of course, is you just rarely even get to have a chance to present a personalized value proposition to all the stakeholders. In fact, I would say it's next to 0% of the times that you get to present that personalized value message in person or in a live meeting. It's near 0. It's usually having to be done through your champion. And so this is another question, just how do we get that personalized value message being delivered through the champion to all the stakeholders in the stakeholder group? And of course, that's where technologies like Consensus and the demo automation and the fuller product experience platform, which we'll talk about, come into play. So I want to emphasize the importance or the preeminence of the buying group. Too often in the go-to-market methodologies, we just think about the champion. And like we have an MQL, and that MQL gets passed and becomes an SQL and an SAL, and then it becomes the qualified opportunity or whatever you do at your organization. Last year I gave the presentation on marketing should be thinking about qualified buying groups, delivering more than one stakeholder, more than just the champion to the sales team. If we have 11 different people, let's just say you've got 10 people in the buying group and marketing is giving you one of those, that means marketing is leaving 90% of the work up to the sales team. So that's an old way of doing things. Now, marketing really ought to be held to a higher standard and needs to be delivering more than one stakeholder over to sales, if at all possible. And with the technologies of today, with buyer enablement technologies of today, you can definitely do that. You just need to engage that champion earlier and help them discover and engage the other stakeholders during the marketing process and during the SDR process. Why wait to discover and engage that buying group? That's one of the key principles of buyer enablement, is make sure you try to pull that buying group and engage them earlier in the process, so you shorten the sales cycle, or the buying cycle, I like to say. So the preeminence of the buying group, and what I mean by that is you can't make a purchase. I won't say it's 100% can't, but I would say it's so extremely rare, it's functionally can't. You can't make a B2B enterprise solution sale to just one person. It doesn't happen anymore. The buying group is what makes the decision together. Sometimes they're formalized, sometimes they're ad hoc, they kind of get cobbled together as they go. That's the most common. And the problem is group buying is quite dysfunctional. And if you think about just the difficulty of making a decision of where to go to lunch, or oh, you need to buy a family car, or whatever decisions you make in groups, you can intuit that it is difficult to make decisions in groups. So you think about making a large technology purchase that's maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars with a group of 10 to 20 people, it becomes a very thorny and sticky challenge. So let's talk about why buying groups matter so much. This is some old research, but I love bringing it up because it's about 10 years old. This is from that Harvard Business Review article, that making the consensus sale. And when they said that the average buying group size was 5.4, well, on this axis here you have the purchase likelihood of purchase of 0 to 100%. Here's the size of the buying group team. If you have a solution that delivers what the buyer needs and you're only selling to one person, the research showed that you have an 81% chance likelihood. I mean, they're likely 81% chance that they will make the purchase. But if you introduce just even one other stakeholder, that likelihood to purchase drops another 25 percentage points to 55%. And when you get down here to where the buying group size of 5.4 was, it drops another 25 percentage points, and you basically have a 50 percentage point drop that's caused by the involvement of the buying group. So if you sell to one person, you're lucky. You got a high chance you're going to be able to help them make a confident purchase decision. You get 5+ people involved, that drops dramatically. And it is not surprising to me that this gets closer and closer to what more of the close rates are in B2B sales. So if that happens with 5.4, what do you think happens with 11 to 14? It drops even further. So this is the buying group of today. You saw the buying group of yesteryear. It's just a handful of people. This is the buying group of today, 11 to 14 people, and it involves all kinds of different roles that get involved at different stages. And of course, this is just one. This is just an illustrative example of how it might come to a buying group might come together. But you think about a lot of times numbers. I wanted to make sure we had pictures of people on this slide, because when you think about numbers, oh, 11, that's it's a big number. But when you actually think of them as individuals, well, it gets real complicated, because people we are all complicated beings. So to complicate things further, there's this other interesting data point, which is that 70% of purchases involve 3 or more departments. So you're not only dealing with different people, but 3 or more departments. Quite often it's because they need to cobble together a budget. Maybe you can't get budget from one single department, and they've all got to get together to decide. And that's when it gets especially difficult, because they've got to find ways to put their money from different departments together. So what is the largest potential failure in any B2B purchase? It is the group buying dynamics. You might say it's the budget discussion, it's compliance, it's getting past IT, or whatever it is, whatever it might be. But the biggest single potential for failure is the group buying dynamics, because there are just so many people. And I, of course, used AI to come up with this image, but I was trying to come up with a metaphor for what is B2B buying like. The champion kind of walks across, and then, oh, I need to bring you across this chasm. And this chasm is what I would call the pain of change. It's the pain of change. And it's very difficult to get across, even one person across, when you're trying to change an organization or change. But trying to get all these people across to the other side is a very difficult process for the buyer. And that's why my book is called Selling is Hard, but Buying is Harder, because the buyer, they've never done it. If you think about the champion is on one side of this this illustration, and they're trying to bring everybody along. Well, they're not experienced buyers. They probably have never purchased your solution before, and your organization or our organizations as technical selling organizations, we know how the buying process should work because we've shepherded lots of buyers through the process. So that's why we need to be the buying coaches. But you think about this metaphor, if one of those goes over the edge, it's going to be very difficult to not have everybody go over the edge. And that's why we call it the consensus sale, because you really got to get everybody on the same page, even though they all have different reasons for not wanting to go across that chasm. So let's get to this question of how do we meet the needs of every single stakeholder? So first of all, what types of buyers typically get involved? And of course, this is going to vary from organization and industry to industry and segment to segment and things like that. But let's just review an example of how buying group, the types of roles that might get together. So you might have a champion. That champion might share their desire for change with middle management. And then if middle management buys into it, they might go together to senior management or the executive management. We'll just say executive management's kind of lumped in together with a senior management. Then, of course, you might have multiple departments of senior management that you've got to go work with. And then at some point, IT gets involved, legal department, procurement, of course. And then there's a very interesting thing that's changed in the last several years. And it's not like this never happened in the past, but there is a new influencer in town, a new stakeholder, and it's the end user. The end user has risen. Research shows that the end user has risen dramatically in their influence inside the buying group. And so I wanted to bring in this image because it's like, here's how it used to be. We're all sitting around and then there's somebody rode into town and they've got a lot more influence than we thought, and they could actually start a fight. In fact, they quite often do start a fight. And so if you're not paying attention to the end user, you've got major problems. And quite often we forget about them because they're not the ones that we typically think of as making a decision. We think it's the champion or the middle or senior management that's making the decision. But the end user, while they may not be the ones who actually make the final decision, they have a massive amount of influence, an outsized amount of influence on whether the buying group actually makes a purchase or not. And the thing that surprised me in the research was how much influence and also how early they get involved. So let's talk a little bit about this particular stakeholder in the buying group. 63% of end users today say they get roped into tech buying decisions. So that's a lot of end users that are being involved in technology purchases. The next stat, 54% who had a negative experience engage in resistance activities. This can happen during the buying process or after it's purchased, and it affects your adoption, value creation, renewals, expansions. So if we aren't paying attention, if we aren't catering to the end user, we are really shooting ourselves in the foot, because first of all, they could tank the whole deal. Now, no one's going to say, oh, it was the end user, they said not to do it, so we're just not going to do it. No one's going to give them sort of the credit, but certain end users will mount a resistance campaign if they don't like it. Then this other stat, 78% of the time end users are involved if the vendors have a PLG, or product-led growth approach. So product-led growth, most of you are probably aware of that, but just briefly, used to mean it's just self-service software. You go out and you get a free trial and you try it yourself, and then you pay for it with your credit card or whatever, and you start using it. Product-led growth, or PLG, approaches have changed, or the definition has changed over the last few years to mean really a hybrid approach, and to include those companies like a lot of us have, of hybrid approaches where you're trying to help the buyer experience the product in some way, even if it's not a free trial. And even if the whole buying process is not completely self-directed, meaning from start to finish. There's some end user based, or we'll say just sort of single user oriented software like Calendly or these kinds of small software tools that individual professionals use, where you can just go and it's a end to end. You just go do the trial, and you want to buy it. You put in your credit card, you submit an expense report, and you just bought it, and then maybe eventually a lot of your team members buy it. Well, most of us are not selling that way in B2B. It is a combination of a traditional selling motion and trying to help the buyers have these product experiences that they need as soon as they want them, or that's the way it should be. So when we talk about product-led growth, I would argue that almost all of us should be, or in some way, are product-led growth organizations. So if we think about this idea that sales engineers traditionally have been their involvement was later in the buying process or in the funnel, which is not true anymore. They are being pulled in all directions across the entire funnel. If we think about this idea that the solution consultants or sales engineers, their knowledge and their expertise is needed by the buyer and by the buyers of that buying group throughout, from the very earliest stages of the buying process, and think about that vision stage and early micro demo kind of stages, the marketing and early stages. Then if we can agree that buyers want access to personalized product experiences early, middle, and late, and even after the purchase, then we need to have a PLG approach of some kind. So 78% of the time end users are getting involved. That's a lot. That's 8 out of 10 buying processes. The end users are having a big influence. So let's keep on going here. How does this buying group come together in relation to the buying cycle? So if we look at the from the top right at the need column, or the need stage, the champion is often the only one kind of thinking about, they don't even know they're a champion yet. They're just thinking about, this should be better. We need a better way of doing this, or we need to take advantage of this opportunity. Then they often start getting the end user involved right away. So before they take it to middle management, what's happening is they quite often say, hey, I've got somebody on my team, or I've got some peers. Before we take it to middle management, then I want to go, I want to go shop this idea to other people. So, hey, I've been thinking about this. Look at this vendor. Look at that vendor. And a lot of times it's a low-level or mid-level manager who's trying to make change in the organization. And before they want to put their neck out on the line, they want to talk to trusted individuals on their team. And so they get end users involved right away. And this has a really important impact or impact on the buying process and on how we should address their needs. And then, of course, they might take it to middle management. That eventually goes to senior management as they get some buy-in on making the short list and really coming up with a solution. And then eventually it's making that commitment and getting IT and finance and all these others involved, right? So this is the buying group, how it sort of assembles as the buyers go through the different stages. So if we think about, we need to deliver on all the different needs of all those different stakeholders, well, we should ask ourselves, what kinds of product experiences can we deliver? Both self-directed or digital first, we'll say, and live. And I'll talk about a couple of different ones. So a lot more of this will be, you can learn more about the product experience platform that Consensus has just released, but there are a lot of tools on the market. I'm not going to be promoting any other tools, obviously, but none of the other tools are a platform. None of them include all of the different components or experiences that buyers need in one place. So I want to briefly touch on what the different experiences are that the Consensus experience platform can deliver, and then we're going to spend the bulk of the time on who needs these experiences and when and why and so on. And so when you think about the three different ways that the consensus product experience platform delivers these personalized product experiences, there's watch, try, and explore. And what's really fascinating about this to me is I had a previous career in instructional technology, and these were the three things always in, and it was instructional technology for technical products. Like, how do you teach people to learn something technical, whether it's a medical device or whether it's a complicated enterprise software platform? And these were the three things that we were always working on. Well, you got to demo it, then you got to let them try it, and then you got to let them explore it. And when you let them do all of those things, then they actually learn how to really understand how to use it and use it in their work environment. Well, it's just fascinating to me that now we are in a position where we're able to take those same the same needs, the same learning needs that adults have, whether you're trying to learn because you want to use it or learn because you're trying to understand whether you should purchase it. We need to be able to demonstrate, and that's where the video-based demos are, the on-demand video demos. That's the watch. Then some people want to try it. That's interactive product tours, where you can kind of be guided through a certain set of steps to show them a specific task, like creating an invoice or running this report or looking at this analytics data screen. And then exploring is more open-ended. Years ago, when I was doing research on whether we should create a broader product experience platform rather than just stay with on-demand video demos, I talked to a lot of different customers. And one of the things that more than one person said, although one person said it in a certain way, was they said, we want guided freedom. And I thought it was really interesting, because so often you give them an open-ended sandbox and they just sort of get lost in there. It's like, just go wander through the forest. And so these simulations and the interactive product tours are so incredibly helpful to create an opportunity to try and explore, but it creates boundaries around it. So it's this benefit of rather than giving them just a full sandbox. And I'm not saying you can't give them a sandbox. We'll get to that. And I got to move on. But the question here, when we think about different stakeholders, is what kind of product experience do they want? Does an executive or senior management, do they want to get in and click around and try out a specific task? No. But the end user, who we already established is super influential, they want to get in and see, how is this one specific task done, and how is it easier? Is it better? Or, what way is that going to work for me? And because that end user gets involved so early, we've got to deliver more than just a demo. And so this whole title of this presentation is to rethink the demo. And what I'm really saying here is, instead of thinking we need a demo, we need to change the way we think about it and tell ourselves we need to create or offer a product experience, because it's not always a demo they need. A demo is great to show product solution benefit. It's great to give an introduction and even a lot of detail on certain things. You could use video demos, and we have been able to for a long time, to show even detailed, deep things. But the bottom line is end users want to try it out and they want to explore. And so do often middle management, depending on what level of management. So each of these experiences can help at different stages of the buying process and for different end users, or different stakeholders in the buying group. So if you only had one of these elements, where you could only deliver on video demos, or you could only provide a product tour or a simulation, well, you would be addressing the needs of some of the stakeholders in the buying group, but not all of them. So let's talk about the product experiences at each stage. And we've only got about 10 minutes, so I'm getting here near to the end of my slides. But this is one of the keys here, is understanding the stage of the buying group. And if you think back on the 6 demo types, what is the buyer going through at this point? Is it just the champion? Is it the champion and the end user? Is it champion, end user, and middle management? Like, who's involved at what stage, right? And that will tell you what kind of experience they need. And then, of course, the type of content that goes in that experience, that's really a completely different topic. But we're focusing on what kind of experience does personalized product experience, does that buyer or that stakeholder need at that stage. So at the need stage, the vision demo, and I would say a vision tour. Why do we need a tour? This is one of the things that I just didn't understand until I was doing this research. I thought, why would you need, nobody wants to be clicking around at the beginning. Like when you're just catching the vision, no one wants to click around. Well, that's not true. You know who wants to click around? The end user. And so I would argue you need a vision tour on your website, and as well as a vision demo. So what about during the research and compare stages? Well, this is when you need your micro demo and a micro tour. Why? Because you're going to need to bring that champion and their end users or end users along with them. And then in the compare stage, that qualifying demo, video demo, and then what I'm calling the qualifying POC simulation. This is one of the big complaints that I heard when I talked to customers doing research, about 3 years ago, I think, was, we spent all this time setting up sandboxes and the environment, and they either never go in there or they go in there and spend 30 seconds or a few minutes in there, and they get lost and they don't know what they're doing. It's just not very effective. And yet we spent 7 hours setting up their sandbox. Well, just like I established in another presentation years ago, the DQL, the demo qualified lead, meaning you shouldn't assign sales engineering resources unless they're willing to go through an automated video demo. Well, I'm suggesting now you should not set up a sandbox unless they are willing to go engage with your qualifying sandbox or proof of concept simulation. So that's what, down at that compare point or compare stage of the buying process. And then in the buying stage or the fear and commitment stages, this is where the technical demo, the closing demos or the automated closing demos we talked about are involved. And then the actual POC. You're not always going to be able to avoid a proof of concept, but we've already seen customers who some percentage of their buyers, once they go through a qualifying POC simulation, they say, that's good enough. We don't need a live sandbox. Obviously, that's not going to be the case for everything, but at the very least, you should be setting up a qualifying gate. And then the last little bit in commitment, I would argue that you ought to give them account access. So even before they purchase, if at all possible, give them account access. And this would be one of the big arguments for setting up a POC, and that's, of course, if that makes sense in your situation, in your motion. But if they can get account access and start the implementation process while you're closing, that can be tremendous, not only as a buying signal, but also as a way to get them to shorten that time to value. So I remember one of our early customers or one of our early teams at Oracle that purchased Consensus. We were in a 4-month process trying to go through all of Oracle's onboarding to become a vendor of Oracle, which was complicated for us at the time. And we got them account access, and they built demos in Consensus before they even launched, so that on day one they started using those demos. So I would say that's another product experience that they need, that they crave, is when they've made a commitment and you're still closing that account, give them account access if you can, even before they close. And then during the value stage where they're getting implemented, onboarding demos, video demos, and click-through tours that are guided to help them understand how to do certain tasks. These are extremely helpful for client success management. So I hope you can see that through the whole buying process, there is something for every stage and for every type of stakeholder. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the stakeholders here. FAQ demos, they go throughout. These are video demos that you can just shoot off to somebody. You can also send FAQ tours if you want to guide somebody through a specific task. So let's look at briefly about how these product experiences relate to the different types of stakeholders. In this case, the champion and the end user, quite often they work so closely together these days that quite often they're going to be involved. If there's a trusted end user or a couple of end users, they're going to be involved in every stage of the process, except maybe the proof of concept. And it really just depends on how involved those champion and end users are. And it also depends on whether or not they're willing to skip the proof of concept for the simulation. Mid-management and senior management, they're not going to get as involved in tours. They mostly want the video demos because they can get in, they can get out, they get to know what they want. And the nice thing is, in the product experience platform, it's all packaged together. So you send one link, one qualifying demo, and if it gets shared around to all these different stakeholders, they can pick and choose. Oh, do I want the video demo? Do I want to dive into the tour? So it's a way to give them that personalized product experience for each role. And then, of course, the other types of departments that get involved, they're going to use less and less of the specific pieces, but there are specific pieces they need. Those closing demos in particular are really helpful for IT and legal and potentially finance. It just depends on what you're using those video demos for, what specific questions you need to answer. Now, how does this map to your go-to-market roles? So in marketing, I would recommend you have a vision demo and a vision tour on the website. And if marketing is using is overseeing SDRs or your business development, a micro demo and a micro tour need to be used as part of your business development process outreach. And then, of course, FAQ demos are used throughout. The SDRs, okay, let's have that here. And then sales, of course, is going to be using those micro demos. They might use a vision demo too, but if they happen to need to route it, help the champion route it to another stakeholder that gets involved. And the qualifying demos. And then, sales, of course, is also going to get in on the technical demo. They're not going to lead it, but they're going to be involved. Then sales engineers or solution consultants, they're most often going to be sending qualifying demos and setting up the POC simulations, technical demos, closing POCs. I'm just kind of zipping here because I know we only got a couple minutes. And then last of all, the CSMs, they're going to use mostly onboarding demos and tours, and then the FAQ demos. So these different ways of looking at all the different product experiences that you can deliver to the different stakeholders and who in your go-to-market organization would be using them. So what is the big takeaway here? It's adapt or perish. So the buyers have changed. The individual buyers have changed. The buying group has massively changed. How are you adapting? I'm just briefly going to mention, if your sales team has not, you're going to lose. So I hope this lights a fire if it hasn't already. The buying group is preeminent. Quite often we get blinded by the champion, meaning we just get so overly focused, myopic focus on the champion, and we forget that the buying group is preeminent. It's a group. It's not one person. It's just you're working with that champion. Buying groups have evolved. They're larger. The modern buyers are not going to wait around, and so they want immediate access, and it needs to be personalized. And there's going to be winners and losers. The organizations that adapt to these buyers, they're going to win. Those who don't are going to lose. And we see this with our customers all the time across industries, how much more they're winning because they're trying to adapt. And it's not just the technology. You've got to learn how to be effective at buyer enablement. So what are the actionable takeaways? Put a vision demo and a tour immediately accessible on your website. Why? Because the champion and the end users get involved that early. Create a click-through tour, micro demo, and qualifying demo for SDR and sales and SEs to send out as part of their process. Share a simulation sandbox instead of or as a qualifier for a sandbox. Share an onboarding tour with CSMs for value creation. And then pro tip, create a demo from your simulation. If you can create a full simulation of your software, then in a lot of ways, it's better to demo from that than from your real software, because you can create the story that you need to, and it's always predictable, and it's always available, even if the actual software is having trouble, and lots of other benefits. So that's part of using simulation experiences, but in a live way is super helpful too. So I hope this has been helpful. I'm really sorry we don't have time for questions. But that concludes the session. I know you've got to go on to other things. This concludes our time. I will hang around for just a minute, and if you want to stick around for any questions. In case there are any questions, I know it's the end of the day for a lot of people, or past the end of the day. So it's been a real pleasure being with you. I hope you've enjoyed DemoFest. Thank you so much for participating. And I'll stick around and answer any questions for maybe 4 or 5 minutes in case there are. And if you have some questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. And if not, no worries at all. So Garrett,
yeah, we've got two for you here, Garen. So we've got one that says, my sales reps are worried that sending automated demos will encourage prospects to cancel or avoid meetings altogether. What should I tell them?
So that's a great question. And there's a lot of worry about automation in general, because we're so used to doing it in person. And there's another related concern that people have about how can it truly be personalized, or is it effective to send something that's automated when people, how do they get that personal touch? What's interesting is the way to think about this is not, oh, I'm worried they won't come to the meeting, but how will they come to the meeting? So the next meeting, they're going to be more likely to come to the meeting if they watch the demo than if they aren't. And we have data around this. So the question is, how do you want them to come to that meeting? Meaning, having done nothing between the first meeting, the previous meeting and the next meeting, or having engaged with the automated demos or the other product experiences like tours and simulations, and then they come to the meeting with questions. And this is what's so amazing about using technologies, because that buyer enablement technologies like Consensus, because it changes the nature of the conversations you have at those meetings. So while I can relate and understand those concerns, what organizations that have adopted buyer enablement have found is that they actually hold the meetings more often, and the meetings are more productive. Because if you think about, they come with questions, they come with a level of knowledge they didn't have, and you can spend the time on actually meaningful consultation rather than just demoing whatever it was they wanted to see. And not only that, and I'm going to give a presentation in New York City on buyer intent data, but you get this buyer data that comes from how they engage with these product experiences, and that can help fuel the effective conversation. So hopefully that helps.
Absolutely. And it looks like that's it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody. It's been wonderful being with you, and I just really appreciate everybody who's organized the DemoFest event for all these years, and this year as well. It's just fun to be participating in this again, and hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thanks so much, and enjoy your rest of the event, the rest of the day.